So hey everyone, my name is Nicholas. So for the ones who were here yesterday, you already see me. I did some tours of Google, and I'm here today to present you the Google Drive SDK and what you can do with the Google Drive SDK. So what is Google Drive first? So let's see who has used Google Drive. No, okay. Who is using also our main competitor? I'm not good at naming. Lots of people, okay, that's good. I'm not going to explain a lot about that. Maybe move this in the right. I'm not going to explain too much then what Google Drive is, since most of you seems to be using either Google Drive or a competitor. As you know, you can basically save files online. It's kind of like an online hard disk, basically. Some of the main advantage, you can basically bring your files everywhere. So for Google Drive, we have PC and Mac sync clients, we call them, and we also have Android and iOS apps, which allow you to basically see your files online and access them, and also, of course, a web client. So who's using mainly, let's see, mainly the sync clients on Mac and PC, for instance? Okay, and who is using mostly, for example, the web clients with Google Docs and everything? Okay, that's pretty cool. And then who is using mostly Android and iOS web clients? Apps. Sorry. Okay. All right. So I wanted to talk about some of the features and give you some insights about why it's so. So one of the best features is, so it's a bit marketing-y. These slides, the first 4 slides, you'll see they've been built by the marketing team, so they're all like super nice. They have no code, of course. And so it's like, big like sentences like, oh, store your files in a safe place. That's kind of like a marketing sentence, but that's actually true for most of our Google products. I have a little story for, I was working, and I'm not going to say which product I was working on before. You can probably look at my CV later. But for one of these products, one day, some engineers did like a really, really bad mistake. Ran a really, really bad job and deleted like hundreds of thousands of accounts, data. That was really terrible. Yeah, it was some like misconfiguration between data center. 2 data centers were not the same, one deleted everything. And out of these like hundreds of thousands of deleted accounts, we were, during this investigation, basically we looked at, basically nobody knew how many copies of each data we had, because Google engineers at Google, they work on this Google infrastructure, a Google framework with many, many layers. They don't always know, how things are deeply in the back end, how many copies of each data we have. So basically during the investigation to basically recover all these files, they kind of discovered that, or they kind of saw that in practice, we had 10 copies of each data every single moment of time. So it can be, in each data center we had 3 copies of each data. There is usually, copies in 3 different computers. So when one dies in one data center, they can basically respawn a machine, copy the data from the 2 others, and they still have 3 machines, so it's safe. There is also usually a backup data center, which is the same, or usually have 2 or 3 machines that behave the same. So that's like 6 copies. There's sometimes a 3rd data center, so there's primary, secondary, sometimes there's a 3rd one. It's not always the case for every account. It depends, if the user is very active. Usually, the more active you are, the more copies of the data you have. And there's also, it's been a few years, we have these like banned backups. So we back up less frequently on a more secure place on basically banned files. Banned. How do you say? Sorry, I'm French. Sorry, tapes. Thank you. I keep saying banned. That's the French word. Sorry. If you keep hearing French words, just correct me. Yeah, we have the caves now, which add a few other backups. And for the story, out of the few hundred of thousands of accounts that got deleted, we recovered almost every single one of them, except probably for a handful. And that was probably users that were not very active, haven't used their data for like a year or a month. And again, I'm not going to say which product that was. You can try to guess. So just to tell you, yeah, the files are very safe, even if we screw up, even if the Google engineers try to delete on purpose. Sometimes we can usually recover the data. Okay, powerful search. Powerful search, there is actually a pretty powerful search inside Google Drive. you'll see for you guys who are using the web client, you have this search bar. It's pretty cool because we index kind of like everything we can on each file. So I wanted to do a little demo. Hopefully the internet connection is working now. Just to show you, we index of course the text that we find inside each file. If it's XML, if it's HTML, or whatever, we try to read it. We index that. We also run. Who have used Google Goggles here in the room ever? Okay, so you probably saw Google Goggles. You take the picture of an apple, you try to guess it's an apple, and do a similar search. So Google Drive has kind of like the same feature embedded. So every time you upload an image, we try to recognize what it is. I think that should be an apple. I named it test, of course, so it's not named apple. Otherwise, that should be cheating. Or maybe it should work for, does it work? Do I have an Android image somewhere? Yeah, probably this one. It's better than searching for an apple. All right, Android, so that works. We don't only, try to recognize kind of like things, but also landmarks. And landmarks, we index that in a few ways. So I think if I search for Taj Mahal, I'm sure you've seen the demo already. We found the Taj Mahal. And I think if I search for India, because we're super smart, we're Google, we usually know what's in India, like the Taj Mahal. Boom. All right. So we kind of run extensive indexing on images that we try to find in files. I think we can even try to find images inside PDF, that kind of things. And you have that on the web client, but also if you're using the API, you'll see later. If you're a developer, you're using our APIs, we have the search feature there for you to use. So you can upload, the picture of an apple, try to search it through the API, and you'll find it. All right, and then view anything. So that's just to say we have, we ship Google Drive with this like Google Docs viewer. So it was already there before Google Drive, when Google Drive was still named Google Docs. We have this online viewer. You can view about 35 file types on this Google Docs online viewer, but that's only an intro to tell you that we don't stop there. We kind of like wanted to open this and make it that you could install also third-party apps and have third-party apps deeply integrated with the Google Drive web UI, basically. And I'm going to show you that with a few demos, showing you a few apps, and show you how they're deeply integrated with Google Drive, and especially the Google Drive web UI, web frontend. So. First demo I wanted to show you is HelloFax. Who has ever used HelloFax? It's not very known here, I think mostly US. You guys should use it. I'm going to show you, it's really awesome. You can fax, basically, files online very easily. Who has ever faxed something in his life? Okay. Who hates faxing because it's super hard, you never know how the machine works? Okay. Same number. Yeah, you'll see HelloFax make it super, super easy. I'm just going to show you. So this is Google Drive. Let me make that bigger. We don't need the left part, I guess. What I've done is I went on the Chrome Web Store, I found the HelloFax app, and I've installed it. When you do that, basically, the HelloFax app gets tied, if the app supports it, gets tied to your Google Drive account. And what that does is, for example, if I search for a PDF, which I want to fax, this awesome PDF, for instance. Okay. So I want to fax this. It's super important that I fax this right now. So what I can do right now, I went a little fast maybe, but I right-click on the file, and we have
Can you maybe increase the font size a little bit?
Oh yeah, sorry, it's a bit small. The problem is, you'll see, I hope it's going to work, because sometimes Google Drive just tries to re-shrink down. They have like this automatic shrinking. But is it better, or it shrink down?
Accessibility.
Okay. Yeah, and of course, I think it badly supports this. No? Okay, it's still pretty good. Yeah, a little bit better. So you've seen here, I right-click on the file on my PDF, and I've chosen Open With, and HelloFax is listed here. Also, the OS2 Playground, which is another app that I've installed. And the Google Drive Viewer, of course. The Google Drive Viewer being the default app. So if I just click on the file, that's using the default app, which is the Google Drive Viewer, which you can change, for example, to HelloFax. So I've opened HelloFax. I've been redirected to HelloFax. So HelloFax has these two features. You can fax, or they have this like online signature management feature with just one fax. So I'm clicking on fax here, and you can see how the fax is able to retrieve the file, through the redirect. They know which file it is. They got previously authorization from me to open my file on Google Drive. They were able to fetch the file. You can see they know it's like a big hello, and then you enter any phone number, whatever, whichever one. It's going to go to the United Kingdom to somebody. And boom, send it now, and it's starting to send. Has a bunch of other features. It's going to try to fax it. It's probably going to fail. I think I've tried that number before. It's going to send me an email saying I failed. If that succeeds, it's going to print, or if that fails, I think it's going to print, kind of like the error you get, usually from the fax machine, you get the document back. I never know where you get the document back. You get it. It's going to add it to my Google Drive. It's going to create that same document. It's basically going to be name hello with like the date. It's saying failure or success or whatever on it. So that was HelloFax, and as you've seen, it was really easy to use. I think another really cool feature of HelloFax, you can have your own number on HelloFax. People can fax you things, and whenever they fax you things, if you have enabled Google Drive, your faxes will appear, in a HelloFax folder inside your drive directly as PDF. So that's like super convenient. And HelloFax actually works with like most countries in the world. Enough free commercial for HelloFax. They're actually really cool and really easy to use. They give you 50 fax credits if you open them through Google Drive the first time. That's it. I have no shares with HelloFax. Another app I wanted to show you is called Pixlr Editor. So who has used or know Pixlr Editor? Okay, wow, a bit more. 3 more than 0. Pixlr is a pretty cool image online editor. It's actually, kind of like Photoshop style image editor. You can have layers, filters, a bunch of things like that. It's totally online. I think it runs on Flash. And they have integrated also with Google Drive. But this time I haven't yet installed Pixlr Editor. So I wanted to show you the install flow of a Chrome web apps. Chrome. So how it works currently is you go to the Chrome Web Store. We know it's a bit confusing. Why do I go to the Chrome Web Store? It's like plus, what if I have Firefox and Internet Explorer? So if you have Internet and Firefox and Internet Explorer, you can still go to the Chrome Web Store and it still works for some weird reason. Yes, you go there and you'll see instead of having a button saying add to Chrome, it will just say install, which is better than add to Chrome actually. But that's also installing the app on Google Drive. So we're changing that, of course, in the future, trying to make the experience a bit better and a bit more obvious for all the Google Drive users. I can't tell you a bit more, but probably in the next 1 or 2 months, you'll see big changes in how we use the Chrome Web Store or how you'll find Google Drive web apps, and it's going to be a lot more obvious. Right now, it's the Chrome Web Store. It's a bit hidden too. If you want to find that Chrome Web Store, what you need to do is, and if you're on Google Drive, you can go either here and create more, get more apps. It's a bit hidden. And the other one is even more hidden, I think. If I can find it. You have this wheel settings, and you have manage apps. And you can click here on get more apps, and you will find more apps. Of course, that's also going to be made much more obvious in the big UX redesign of Google Drive apps. It's going to be made way more central on Google Drive, and you'll be able to find apps a lot more easily. So how it works right now? I need to find Pixlr Editor here on the Chrome. So we have this this Google Drive collection, they say. And you just need to click Add to Chrome, which is Add to Chrome and Install to Drive. And once you've added it to Chrome and to Drive, you can basically go back to Drive. For example, reload. For now, we still need to reload the Google Drive content. And now, if I want to search for images, since Pixlr is an image editor, we should be able to you open it with Pixlr Editor, for instance. So here I'm opening this for the first time with Pixlr Editor. So on first times, you get this OAuth 2 green screen, of course, asking for authorization for Pixlr to access that Google Drive data. And we'll talk a bit about this in more details on the technical part of the presentation. You'll see there's many ways, many basically OS2 scopes for the one who are familiar with OS2. This one is actually pretty restrictive and it's pretty good on a security standpoint. Pixlr is only going to have access to the files that you have opened with the app. You're not giving full access to your whole Google Drive and all of your Google Drive files. You're only giving access to the file that you've right-clicked open with Pixlr. Or that, of course, Pixlr created. If Pixlr uploaded through the API files to your Google Drive, they have access to these files. There's also, apps can also, of course, request full access through another scope. But here, Pixlr played nice. They use this more restrictive scope, which is all they need, because you can only open files this way right now through Pixlr. So I'm allowing access, and as soon as this works, we should, get redirected to Pixlr. Pixlr should load my image. I have no clue what I've just opened, so hopefully it won't be too crazy. Oh, card. Yes. All right. And that's it. So then, you could, modify the file and save it back automatically to Google Drive. As soon as you click save, it will save it back to Google Drive. Change the name, do the usual things you can do with an image editor. Basically, that's fine. Pixlr is actually pretty nice. You should all try it out. All right. And I'm usually super late in my presentations. I take way too much time, so just checking. Then we're going to go in a bit more technical details here, what you can do with the Google Drive SDK. I'm just going to go really quickly through the features. Of course, the obvious things you can do with Google Drive, create, list the files that are in your drive, create, modify files, manage files. You also have, sharing and revisions. You can create new revisions of each file. People can restore all the revisions, or you can do that through the API. But yes, I will upload, I will update Google Chrome later. You also have sharing, of course, in Google Docs, in Google Drive UI, you can right-click share with other people. You can do that through the API, and you can also search, as I said, you have this powerful search feature. You can also integrate deeply, as I should just show you with Pixlr and HelloFax, with the Google Drive web UI. So having your app listed, in the create menu on the left, alongside Google Documents, Google Spreadsheets, Google Presentations, you can have your app. And you can also right-click and open files directly. Or if your app is the default app, you simply click on a file and it will open it with your app. We also have a set of embeddable widgets, which are basically ready to use UI components that Google Drive ships. One is basically a file picker. So what's good is the file picker works with the most restrictive scope. The one where we said that your app only has access to the file that has been opened with your app. If you're using our picker, you can have basically a UI embedded inside your website, inside your app, that shows all the files in Google Drive. It basically sits inside an iframe and uses your Google authentication. your currently Google logged in account. If you open a file through that web UI, it's kind of like a trusted little widget that we ship. We're going to whitelist the file that you open through there for the app that wants to open it. So that allows app to still have a way for users to select files within their own UI and still use the most restrictive scope, which only allows them access to the app that has been opened, to the files that has been opened with their app. So as soon as you double click and open a file with a certain app, we whitelist that file to be accessed by that app. So if the file lists all the files in your drive, they're only going to see the files that you have opened previously, either through the main web UI or through that embeddable widget. Yes?
Is it clear from a developer perspective what Google's position is going to be on the commercialization model of this?
What do you mean by the commercial?
Okay, if one were using one of these well-known competitor products, there's a pricing per storage unit, for example. Is the plan to do the same? So, in other words, if I've got a client who's going to be committing to putting a lot of data into a thing,
yes,
do I want to commit him to going down a platform where I'm not sure what the commercialization implications are for him?
Okay, so is your question specifically, are we going to change the pricing, or?
Well, is it defined in terms of an undertaking that it won't get worse than, or whatever?
I don't think it will get worse than. I can't promise it. I know the panel. unfortunately, I can't tell you. It could be dramatic changes of how it currently is. It's still undefined. Sorry. Either we will, the pricing could change. Right now, the plan is to do a more dramatic change. Move maybe completely away from selling storage on a per gigabyte way and do something different. We'll see. It should be much better than the current pricing. So that's why I don't think, so you're probably asking because as we moved from Google Docs to Google Drive, the price increased a lot. Maybe you've noticed, I've noticed actually. So when we were, offering Google Drive as Google Docs before the whole rebrand, and it was harder to upload files, we didn't have shipped the sync clients. Google Drive was actually a lot cheaper than it currently is, 5 times cheaper. We're 10 times cheaper than our main competitor. It was just, as we were entering or competing with these competitors more on the same basis, offering sync clients and offering basically the same kind of features and also more features through these deep integrations. It's been decided that we were basically way too cheap and that we were competing way more aggressively, that we could still be half the price and still it would be better for the users to move to us than our main competitors. As I said, we could make storage a lot cheaper. I don't think we will go more expensive. Of course, you can't take my word. I'm not on the marketing team. Neither am I a VP, unfortunately. So yes. And that will be, maybe I will make Drive cheaper. We'll see. That's going to be in a while.
That's your election campaign.
Yeah, re-election. We'll see after re-election. So, yeah, don't take my word. I'm not the one deciding, but personally, I don't feel that we will make it more expensive. We were cheaper before. I think we can only go that way. So, you can only trust me. Sorry. All right. Sorry, the other second embeddable widget is kind of like sharing dialogue. You have this easy sharing dialogue that you can embed in your website. So, instead of rebuilding some kind of, sharing dialogue where you would show the users that, with autocomplete all the users that the user knows and can easily share with a file with other people, we have that ready for you. So you can quickly embed that, with 2 or 3 lines of JavaScript inside your website if you want to. That's quite nice. So now, how to get started integrating with Google Drive. So who has already integrated with a Google Web API before, like a REST API, like Contacts, Calendar, Google+, okay, good. So you guys should be pretty familiar with, you probably went to the Google APIs console, so that's the first step. Right now with newer APIs, with really older APIs, there was almost no registration process. You could simply, start using the API, start authenticating your users with OAuth1 or WhatsApp or our other authentication methods. Now, with all our newer APIs and as we're deprecating the older ones, most of our web APIs will be like this. It's currently, like 70% or 80%. You have to go, the first step is to go to the Google APIs console and register your app. I'm just going to show you, I'm not going to, otherwise we'll run out of time. I'm not going to do that. Oops, I'm not seeing everything. All right, so this is the Google APIs console. Right now it's hosted under, I'm reading because it's quite small right now. Maybe make it bigger. Okay, you go to code.google.com/API/console. What you do is you create a project, you just tell us who you are. So you give a name to your application and you enable APIs. So under API access, that's where you, services. Under services, that's where you enable, for example, the Google Drive API if you want to use Google Drive and the Google Drive SDK if you want to use the UI integration, the integration inside the Google Drive UI. So just to talk a little bit about the UI integration, why you have to enable a second component is enabling this second component adds a Google Drive SDK tab where you basically have to give lots of info, for example, which MIME type your app supports, so that we can map your application to the MIME types, to only the files, that your application supports, of course. we don't show hello files under all the files that are under the drive. We only show them for like PDF, Google Docs, the kind of apps they know how to import. The kind of, files they know how to import, etc. And you give also the open with and create new URLs, so the URLs to which we redirect the user to. That kind of things. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. You'll see it's pretty obvious. There's that nice help page here. And we'll move forward with the presentation. So once you've done that, enable the Google Drive API, you can go and create OAuth2 credentials. So who is familiar with OAuth2 already here in the room? Okay, maybe that was about 20%. I'm just going to explain a little bit what is OAuth2 and how to use it for the other guys. It's really OAuth2. You guys really have to use it. That's how most now web APIs, and what most APIs use or will use as an authorization protocol. So it's kind of like this, for web APIs, it's kind of like basically 3 steps in authorization process where the first step is to redirect the user to a grant page that sits, on the website, on the domain of the data you want to access. So you redirect your users to Google Drive, to Google, a Google login page. I'm actually going to show you with the OAuth2 playground. Who have ever used the OAuth2 playground here in the room? Please, someone. Yes. Yes. Okay, because that's what I created actually. I work on the OAuth2 playground team. I'm actually the lead engineer for this. It was just a 20% project for a few people to use it. So the OAuth2 playground is this little tool that allows you to basically test APIs with the OAuth2 protocol and see how the OAuth2 protocol works. Basically, we show you step by step how it works on an HTTP level. And here I was just going to show you quickly with Google Drive to basically explain you how OAuth2 works currently. So the first step, is to redirect the user to a grant page where the user is going to approve authorization for your app. So after there was a pre-step, the things I showed you on the API's console where you register your application OAuth2 credentials. So what we do is we give you a client ID and a client secret. So the client ID basically tells us who you are as an app. So we can deduct quota, we know which APIs you have enabled. As I said, we can deduct quota. If some APIs you pay for it, like Google Translate, we know, we basically bill you, take money from you, that kind of things. It just tells us who you are, which app you have. So the first step here is to basically select the APIs that you want to authorize against. Here I've simply selected Google Drive. So how it works is OAuth2 uses scopes. So a scope is a string, it's just a string that identifies the API, the type of data you want to access. So if you were accessing, for example, Facebook, you would say, hey, I want the profile data and I want, read write or that kind of stuff. In Google, we use their URL style. So it's really small, but here you can see this HTTP Google API /OAuth/drive. Gmail, let's say contacts instead. Contacts would be google.com/m8/feeds. Google Analytics, they have Google API /OAuth/analytics. Read only for them if you want read only. So that's basically a string that just identifies your APIs. And that needs to be part of the redirect where you're sending your users to. So here I'm simply clicking Authorize API. So I'm logged in multiple accounts. So that's an extra step where the user, if he's logged in multiple accounts, select the accounts he wants to authorize against. And here you see that's the OAuth2 grant screen where we tell you, hey, the app is the OAuth2 playground, is requesting permission to the data that we've selected. So here, only Google Drive. View and manage the file and documents in your Google Drive. So that's the full scope access. And usually the users click allow access because they trust you all the time. It's whatever you ask for. That's kind of like what the study shows. So then on the playground here, we just show you what happened. So what happened is you redirected the user to this URL here. And the URL contains the scope that I've shown you. It contains a few other things like your client ID, like the redirect back to your website, that kind of things. The URL to redirect back to the user. And that's what we did. We just displayed the page. what do you get also, sorry, that's what happened. The user got redirected back to your website. And so the second step here was to you get this code, this authorization code here. The authorization code, that's only on the web server flow. There's many flows in ROS2, I'm not going to go through all of them, but for the web service flow, which is kind of like the most complete and the most complicated too, you get an authorization code that the after this first step. And the second step is to exchange the authorization code for tokens. And that's what you really want. You want tokens. So here, that's the second step happening. So that's how you do the authorization code. You do that completely on the back end for your users. That will be transparent. They won't see that. They will only see step one when they get redirected back and forth. So you exchange the code for tokens. Here we give you back tokens. And you can see you will usually get, the first time at least, an access token and a refresh token. So the access token, it's this long string. It allows you to access the APIs. You add that to each request to the API. That tells us for what user you're accessing, who is the app, who is accessing, so we can do the quota, everything, all the information isn't there. You don't need username and password. All you need is this access token. You can pass it either in a URL parameter or in a header. It's just going to show you that doing a request to the API on sector here. The refresh token here, the second one, is used. You get it if you requested offline access. So you'll get access if you want access, for an unlimited period of time to the API. So using the refresh token, you can get new access token. One problem with the access token, it's only valid 1 hour. So you need to do what we call a refresh. You need to refresh it. Here is the number of seconds your token is valid. 2,600, that's an hour. So if you have a refresh token, you can basically get new access token to get a 1 hour period, a 1 hour basically valid access token. If you use our client libraries, don't worry, that's all transparent. In our client libraries, you give the client library the refresh token and the access token, and we do all the refresh without telling you. So how we do that is we try to request an API. For example, we try to do the call you're trying to do, like list the files or create a contacts, list the Google calendars of the user. And if that request fails with a 4 or 3, we refresh the token automatically, transparently for you. We get a new token and we retry the same, the same action. So that's all transparent if you're using our client libraries. So make sure you're using them. It's a lot more complicated when you need to handle that all by hand and create your own, do all the HTTP requests and stuff like that. So all our client libraries, as far as I know, in most of the language, in all the language we support, I think we support 8 languages. The main ones: Java, .NET, Ruby, PHP, Python, whatever. I think the main one we don't support is C++. And except if you're using, a hipster super language, like Scala or whatever. Actually, that works with Java. We do support Java. All right. That was OS2. I just wanted to show you how it works now. The tool has this nice feature where we can get all the available operations for the API. Like list file is the main operation where you're going to see all the files that are in the user's drive. And I can send a request. That's a get. Get to that API, authenticated with OS2, and you get this JSON stuff, which is all the files. That's the Google Drive API you see in action right here. As an authorization mechanism, I've used a HTTP header. So that's the access token that I've just got. It's just added to the authorization HTTP header. And I can change that because, you probably, I don't know if you know, but OS2 has been in kind of like a draft state. It wasn't, I think it's in the past few days that it's finally been made, a definitive specification. There have been multiple drafts, and the formats of exchanges changed a lot. In the past 3 years. I think it took 3 years. So Facebook is still using a really old draft, for example, that's not compatible with all the client libraries. Google tried to stay up to date. Now it's definitive, so that was using draft 10 here, authorization with the OAuth prefix. If you're using the latest draft, you have to use a bearer prefix like this. Send the request. That also works on Google APIs. As you see, that's like the HTTP header authorization with the bearer prefix. The last way to use that, very quickly, is to use the access token URL parameter. That plays much more nicely if you're using JavaScript, those kind of things. You can just append basically to the URL access token as a URL param and pass the access token. That also identifies you and authorizes you. That's enough for our students because it's so hard. Actually, that's enough for web server apps. I've just shown you that. I just wanted to show you the code, just show you how easy it is. Who is a Java developer in the room? Or knows Java? Who doesn't know Java developing? Well, okay. Well, I only have Java sample anyways. Sorry, you guys. So that's just how we're authorizing basically all that I've just shown you, how you do that on an with Java, just to show you that it's a bit more simple. I mean, that you don't have, it's not like very, very scary that you could think it is. First, you have to create this flow object. You only pass it the scope. The scope is, I want Google Drive, I want Google Drive access, and you pass it the client ID and the client secret. You got that by registering your app in the API's console. You also pass it a redirect URI. That's where, after you redirect your user, where we need to send it back to. So usually we send it back to your app. That's the redirect URI. And then, if you're in a servlet in Java, you do a send redirect like this to that URL that the client library has just built for you. And then we'll send the user back to what we call to callback handler. So the callback handler is supposed to read what's in the URL, basically the code parameter. Because when we redirect the user back to pass it the code, the code you need to exchange it for tokens. That's what we do here. You basically exchange the code here. You also need to set the redirect URI, that's just security feature. And you get the access token and the refresh token here. That's it, you have that. And that's all you are integrated, you are authorized. You have your access token or your refresh token. You save that to your database. You have the credentials for your user forever. That's how it works. For Android, who is an Android developer in the room? When you say you knew Java, you knew Android, right? So in Android, there's a really, really nice thing that just launched. Who knows about the Google Play Services? I think that just launched. Google Play Services is something we launched very recently, though it works back to Android 2.2, I think. We're supposed to basically install it on all the devices, retroactively up to there's just an APK that gets automatically installed by the Play Store. So it should be, in theory, available for all the devices that are Google compatible. As you know, there are some who are not. They will get the Google Play Services. And when a user has the Google Play Services, it's very easy to authorize to Google APIs. It's all built in. So all you need to do is like this one line here. That's going to give you an access token. That's all you need to do. This gives you an access token. First, you need to, of course, select an account. If the user has multiple Google accounts on his phone, you need to probably, display him, hey, which account you want to use? This one, or this one. They usually select. There's a pre-built UI for that called the account picker. That's also kind of new. Then you can get the access token. If the user hasn't authorized yet, usually they get displayed at least once with like a screen. Hey, this app wants to access this kind of data, authorized or not. You'll get an exception. The exceptions contains an intent, so you can basically redirect the user to that intent or whatever. I'm not super Android developer. The intent, you can basically do the magic thing that you do in Android. The user, boom, he gets the UI to basically authorize. There's also some kind of errors I haven't listed. You should click on that link if you want to know more. Like if the user does not have Google Play on his device, you're also getting another intent basically that's going to show the user how he can download it or that kind of things. There's some other kind of errors with intents to basically get that sorted. There's also some really cool Google I/O presentations of how to build a Drive app on Android that you will need to check it out. Well, the first step, of course, is to go to the Google APIs console. This time you don't create a client ID and a client secret. You go and you kind of give it a package name and give us SHA-1 fingerprint signature of your application, and we'll know basically by looking at your APK and getting the fingerprint, we'll know that you're the correct person. That your app is currently authorized to use basically these Google credentials. So that's all done automatically for you. All you need to do is really register a package name, and SHA-1 fingerprint. The Google Play services will do all the rest in the backend. All right. An alternative, if for example, the app does not know, does not have the Google Play services, it's not like a Google-enabled device, for example, it's some kind of like weird Chinese thing. You can use a web view. Some people were using that before the Google Play services were there. Actually, on Avo, they've open sourced some sample code. You can go there. Do the step by step. You basically do the web server flow that I've just shown you before. Use that on Android using WebView, and you try to catch back when you get the code back. Basically, you catch that. You remove the WebView, and you do exchanging the code in the backend and everything like that. So I've listed all the steps here. We're already really out of time, so just going to pass really quickly. For most users who have like Google-enabled devices, the Play Store is much nicer and has a native experience, offers a native experience. So now integrating with, actually using the API, you'll see that's like a lot more simple than like authorizing. Don't worry. Authorization is usually the most tricky part in web APIs. Then using the API is usually pretty simple, pretty obvious. So here, you just simply, first step is to create that drive service object. How you do that? You take your credentials. That was the object we got before from authorizing. That contains the access and the refresh token. And you use the drive builder, at least in Java, you use that. You have your drive service, and then what you do when you need to create files, you look at our online documentation and you copy paste. That's what most engineers do. You copy paste most of the day. I do that. Here to create a file, well, you give us a few metadata about the file, the description title for the web UI, that kind of things. You can set the man type manually if you want. And here, if you have an actual file, which is like a physical, a hard disk file, you can pass it to the API and then do the insert operation that's going to insert a new file. You can give us, byte array, that kind of stuff is supposed to do as well. That's creating a file. Reading a file, yes.
Is there any kind of way you can use this with incremental change? So like version control, in other words, if you've got a client who's continually making minor updates to sequence.
So we don't support uploading diff at the moment. That's something we're working on though. Basically improve the API. Also the sync clients needs it because if you modify, one frame in your 10 gigabyte movie, right now we have to upload for 10 gigabytes. It's not super efficient, so yeah, we're working on uploading diff files. I'm not sure exactly when that's coming. It's like in the pipeline, so that will be there at some point. Though one interesting feature here that uses resumable uploads automatically. So if you're uploading a big file and some part of the file fell or your connection is a bit flaky, that's still supposedly kind of going to work. Most of our client libraries use resumable upload. We have this resumable upload protocol where you resend chunk by chunk. If one fails, we can retry that chunk, etc. It's done transparently for you in the background. If you want to use the protocol, you can look at our doc. That's all documented as well. And fetching a file, well, you need the file ID here, and that's basically this, I think this one line, that's it. That gives you the file metadata. So the API works like that. The API gives you basically JSON responses, so metadata was the file. The title was the description, a bunch of things. Is it stored, is it deleted, whatever. If you want to get the actual contents of the file, the metadata contain a download link, and then you need to send a second request to the download link. That's the actual data, bytes of the file that's there on that second link. So that's two requests to get an actual file content in the directory. That's it, I think. In 2 minutes, I will try to finish the presentation. So the second part I want to show you about, now you know how to use the API, exchange files, etc. The other thing that you can do is basically integrate with the Drive Web UI, just like Pixlr and HelloFax did. And you can also do that on Android devices. I'm just going to go quickly over it after that. So that's the UI integration you've seen under the create menu or the right-click open with. And that's on the Chrome Web Store, you can install it. There's another way to install your app. That's where we're moving also. That's kind of part of that's what we're going to use in the big reshuffle of all this. You can install your app through an OAuth2 flow. So we have a special scope called drive.install, this whole URL, and as with drive.install, where you try to authorize a user to that scope. All that we're showing is, oh, that app is requesting the ability to install itself on Google Drive, on Google Drive basically, and be listed under create new and open with. And if the user agrees to that, or to flow, boom, the app gets installed. So you can basically have install buttons on your website, for example. And we'll also use that kind of flow in the next redesign. Instead of using this weird Chrome Web Store install, we'll make the user go through a quick flow. He agrees that he wants to install the app, and the app gets installed. So you create an install button very easily, just making the user go through a simple, for example, JavaScript flow. For the web UI integration, as I said, you can either have your app listed under the Chrome Web Store. That's super painful. Who has ever listed an app under the Chrome Web Store? Okay, how painful is it? Yeah, it's just like it's just not like a 2-minute process. It's like you need to prove that you're the owner of the website. So use Webmaster Tools to prove that you're the owner of the website. Upload assets, so images of the right size, of the right pixel size format, etc. So if you have all that, that's pretty easy. If you need to open, Photoshop and create, this like blank file just because you will get something done and you want to start coding, that's kind of painful. The best way, as I said, if you want to start coding easily and start integrating and start testing and install, drive UI integrations, is to use the install scope. You can have a look at our results. It's really easy to use, and then through another website. Okay, then you need, as I showed you before, enable the Drive SDK and the Google API console, configure, tell us which types of files you support, and once your app gets installed, you'll see your app under a right-click open with. Once you click on a file, you open a file with your app, with the open with feature. All we're going to do is we're going to redirect your app. We're going to make the user go through an OAuth2 flow, and then redirect the user to your app. So you'll get the code automatically. The flow will be partially done for you, the OAuth2 flow. You'll only get, the user would have gone through the first step, and you'll get the code. And then in the state parameter here, we'll pass you a JSON object, and that JSON object basically gives you the file ID that you need to open. So boom, you have the file ID, you're already authorized to access Google Drive, then you can just open that file using the API since you have the ID, that's quite easy. For create operation, of course we don't give you any file ID, the user is not using any file, but we give you the parent ID. So if the user has a certain folder opened on his web UI view, we give you what folder that is, so you can create the file to that folder. That's what we do, in Google Spreadsheet, Google Spreadsheet, Google Documents, Google Presentation. To create a Google Spreadsheet, it's going to be created in the currently open folder. So we wanted you to be able to do the same. Last thing, there's also an export ID if you're listing your app to be able to open Google Documents. So now you have the ability to open Google Documents, Google Spreadsheet, and Google Presentations. You can access the raw data of Google Spreadsheet, Google Document, Google Presentation. Though we give you export links. So we basically detect, hey, we can export Google Presentation in a PDF, and HelloFax supports PDF. So if HelloFax has enabled exporting, it's just ticking one thing in the API's console. Then we're going to show HelloFax for Google Presentations, and instead of reading raw data, like using the download link, they're going to use the export link. And we have a list of export links. Basically, we're saying, hey, you can export that Google Presentation in PDF, or in also a text file, or in other formats like Microsoft PowerPoint. So if you support these types of formats, it will also allow you to basically export the Google Documents, the native Google Documents, to the API. All right. And for Drive, just super quickly because we're way out of time, right? Yeah.
And we start later.
Okay.
Take your time.
A few minutes. So as I said, I'm not a super Android developer. I know a bit how authorization works and those kind of things, but for instance and everything, you guys probably know a lot better than me. Here I've listed what you can do to integrate with the Google Drive app on Android. So the same way you can have a UI integration to the Google Drive app. You have this Google Drive app on Android and iOS. For now, only Android has the ability to, when you're opening a file, you can basically have the same experience that you have on the web, on our web front end, on our web UI. So when you're opening a file, we're going to do a few things. Either we detect that, so we're going to list, you know how intent system work, right? You open like an image, and we show you, all the applications that support opening images, right? For Drive, that's a bit different. We're going to list all the apps that can support images natively in Android. If you select one of these apps, we're going to download the file first. The Drive UI, sorry, the Drive app is going to download the file. If it's a big file, it's going to take a while. Then open that app and pass it the file, right? You have a special intent, which is this intent here. If your app has, registered against that intent, then we're not going to download the file. We're simply going to pass the app the ID of the file. And then, because that means this app is basically Drive enabled. So by just passing the ID, the app can do whatever it is. It can do better things, like for example, streaming the file if it's an MP3 or a video. And the app won't have to wait for the whole file to be downloaded by the Drive app. So it's a bit more efficient. So that's this new intent here that you can register against. And we'll also list your file, of course. So we list two things. The apps that can support, for example, images if you click on an image, and the app that have listed this man type, and that say that they support Drive. And then we'll only pass the ID and let you handle the download or things like this. So that's how you do it. And again, you can have a look at this Google I/O presentation, explain everything from authentication to how you can use that intent.
Sorry,
yes.
I'm interrupting yet again.
Sure.
The pattern recognition tools you use, for example, for looking at images, obviously this is something that is quite good at.
Yeah.
We don't work with pattern recognition, but can we exploit the API within Google to set up our own indexing feature extraction?
I don't think so. No,
It'd be super
that's really
interesting.
kind of like a black box right now, right? You upload images, we do some kind of recognition, and then you can use search. It's a bit of a black box. There's only one thing that we expose through the API is the ability to convert a file. There's this URL parameter, which is OCR, and you can set to true. When you upload a file, an image, we're going to try to OCR that image. It's actually not that super awesome. It kind of works if the image is very simple and has like obvious text in it. It's not as good as like super professional software.
So what I think would be really interesting would be if we could actually put in a feature extraction facility.
Yeah.
So for example, let's say we're specializing in camels, and we want to tell our customers whether they've got a 1-hump or a 2-hump camel.
Yeah.
We have a nice feature extraction across the top. Does it say once, twice?
So now that you mentioned it, we let you set the indexable text for the file if you want. So that's kind of how it's done currently for that feature. So if your app, for example, supports a file, uploads files that are like that we can't index, right? Because it's binary.
Basically.
Yeah, you can basically give us the text that we need to index.
Yes.
So yeah, if it's for most binary file, we won't be able to index it or read it at all. So basically, you give us the text, can be whatever form of text, XML, just text, and we'll just index it.
And does that have any impact on SEO ranking, or can you tell me if it did?
No, I don't think it does, realistically.
So for example, if we business to business, if we've got a lot of client data being dumped into Google Drive with reference to our website from big name companies, since you're indexing it, is that factored? Is it accessible on your terms of service?
I wouldn't say. I don't think. I wouldn't know, but I don't think realistically that it plays a role in the Google search engine, in the main,
Just all these nice little side effect benefits.
Yeah. I just don't think so.
Okay.
Could be, but I would say it's unlikely at the moment. So, and that was the Android code you need to do. Since we are super out of time, it's going to go super quickly. No, questions are good. They're very interesting usually, so feel free. That's how you register your intent in the manifest file, and that's how you, the code that triggers the intent, gets triggered when the intents get triggered or something like that. Again, you guys know better than me. And 30 seconds. That's the UI, you know, the file picker that I told you about. That's what it kind of looks like, and the one that you can integrate into your website, and that's kind of how you configure it and trigger it on your website. So basically, you tell us, oh, I want to see Google Drive. That's the view for Google Drive. The MAC types you support. You set your app ID. You set a callback that will call whenever the user has selected the file. And then you can trigger the file. I don't know if I have the code. No, I think you just say, you know, picker.view, and we show the picker. You get the callback, so you can really quickly and easily have that. The picker is cool because it supports other Google APIs like ImageSearch, YouTube, Picasa. You can add these views, so the user could select his image on Picasa, select his image on Google Drive, select videos, select images on Google Search, upload images. It has all these kind of modules you can add, views basically they call it. The picker is actually pretty cool and makes it super easy for people to be able to you know, select their data on Google Drive and use it on your end. I think we're going to take questions now for a few minutes. Sorry, when do we need to stop now?
Basically, you can continue.
Okay.
And
it's
I would,
now, is it?
I would say it's on 11. We shift the next sessions for 15 minutes, so
Okay.
11:45 will be the next session.
Okay.
The others are in the break because the YouTube was very fast. So.
Okay.
But you can.
Anyway, yeah, I'll take questions now if some people have any about Google Drive. Yes, in fact.
You've mentioned the ability to export native files.
Yes.
Should we also define our own export like procedures for other files?
No, we can't. We won't expose, you know, third-party exports to the APIs. It's only available for the Google native formats because basically we don't have a way to expose the raw data of it, like we do for the rest of the files, the regular files, like images or whatever you upload. We have the actual data; it's there, and for Google Documents, so people can go and download the whole file. For Google Documents, it's a bit hard because you know it's some database. It's like it's not a file. So we have export links, and it's kind of read-only. You can only read them. You cannot really go and modify the data currently, like for example for Google applications. The only way you can do that, like upload a Google presentation, is upload, for example, one of the file formats we support and set the convergirl parameter to true. We're going to try to convert it to a Google Documents. You probably tried that. Some of you doesn't always work super nicely. Sometimes it works nicely, sometimes it doesn't. So it's the risk. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
I have a question about the indexable text.
Sure.
You just said you can give additional text to the indexer. You said, is it only text within the document, or can I give additional?
You can give additional. I mean, we will trust you.
Yeah.
If you say Britney Spears MP3,
yeah,
and stuff like that, we'll totally trust you. We won't run any checks. So this feature was done initially because, and that's good, I can talk about that, because of shortcut file here. That's something I was going to talk at the end. We let people basically create what we call shortcut files. It's some kind of file. It looks like a file, but it has no data on Google Drive. It's kind of like a link, a pointer to a third-party data on a third-party app. So it's kind of like listing, but we don't have the data. Because we don't have the data, we couldn't index anything, so we let the user tell us what's indexable on that file, and we also then open that to any other files types. You know, since, for example, I don't know, we support AutoCAD files, and AutoCAD files maybe we don't read them very well, we don't index them very well. So AutoCAD can tell us the indexable, all the text that's inside, or what they have on their end. Sometimes, if they have more description, a better title, we let them go add this thing.
But I guess I cannot like link the indexable text with a section of the document, so it's highlighted or something like that.
No.
I'm just thinking it might be confusing to the user if you type something
and
you find a document, you open it, and the text to that is not
there. Yeah, it would be confusing. We trust you, so
but
don't make it confusing for the user.
It might make sense
that
the document is found, but I want to show the to the
Yeah,
user,
so-
why was it
Yeah. Currently, you could not basically tell us like an anchor. That could be an interesting feature. We just, don't have that right now. Yeah, it could be interesting to tell us, hey, this is the text. This is an anchor, a part of the file,
For
the
example,
top or the bottom or whatever. But for most of these files, since we cannot, I see what we could do there, which would be nice. So usually we don't know how to open these files. We don't know how to display them. Though it would be nice if the user opens the file and he was searching, we could pass you the search query. That's actually an interesting feature.
For example,
We could pass you the search query. You could highlight that.
I was actually just thinking of plain text or Google Doc files, but for example, in medical, I work in the medical field, and often you have these shortcuts for a diagnosis, for example. Instead of shoulder fracture, the document will just say A40.7 because that is a shortcut, and I want the user to allow it to search for shoulder fracture, and if there's A40.7 in the document, it should be found, and ideally it would even be highlighted, for example.
It's kind of like this idea of being able to embed your own recognition.
Yeah.
A little bit like that.
That could be cool. That's a good point there. Yeah. Unfortunately, right now, it's very simple. You just pass text and they
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Maybe if we have time. Any other questions? Questions? Okay. Good. Thank you very much, guys.